all these different things are happening and evolving on their own. Maybe within 10 years, someone's going to finally like grasp it all, put it all together, make something a little bit more holistic with all the technologies that are out there.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Paid Search NYC podcast. Today, very excited to be chatting to Yazmin Mandamiento, who is a director of paid search at Digital Matter. Digital Matter are a growth and transformation consultancy based in New York. And today we're going to be chatting about AI, specifically the kind of practical applications in our day-to-day work in paid media. We've very much come out of a hype cycle for AI and entered in the last 12, 18 months, for many of us, the application stage. So there's a lot going on there and really excited to get into that subject. But before we do, Yazmin, welcome and thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having any of us on this and creating the space for it, because it's really exciting.
Of course, it's been a lot of fun to do, and it continues to be so. So yeah, I'll keep doing it. I mentioned very briefly there your current role, director of paid search, but tell us a little bit about how you got to that role, previous roles you've held, experience, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so this has all been kind of a long journey. The journey years before COVID, it's been something that's been on my mind getting into the digital advertising space. Like when I first got out of college, when I think it was still very new, this whole paid search, paid social wasn't really even a thing. And I first started off doing actually paid search and social. I got hired to do paid search, but I don't think I had a choice. So they just threw both of them on me. And for the longest time, I was managing both paid search and paid social, moved my way through, I guess, the latter there. And then during COVID, I actually took a couple years where I was doing my own thing, consulting on my own. I had heard previous colleagues of mine doing something like that. So I was like, why not? And that was a great time because the market was on our side. But since then, I was also like, I think the only way to level up from here is to maybe start my own company in the advertising space, which didn't seem appetizing. So I was like, let me go back and work full time. One of my clients actually wanted to work full time together. So now I'm at Digital Matter, which has been great. And then, yeah, now leading the search team. But also, I think with all this AI item, there's a lot of people leading people like me within the space. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So interesting to hear you took the leap to be freelance during COVID. Like you said, the industry is very much on our side. Did you make that jump knowing that, or did that just coincide?
I think that just coincided. I was listening to like the market report. There's a lot of people talking about like layoffs and whatnot with, I think, the emotions, the unknown items happening with COVID. So it was more so a leap of faith, but it worked out. And actually, this will be interesting to talk about within like the AI world, because I just wonder how people are taking it. Like, are freelancers going to start booming again? There are already like smaller agencies that don't necessarily feel the need to hire more people. So are people going to start taking it on themselves to just do everything, start some vibe coding and figure out how to use agents to like scale up without having to build an entire company? It'll be interesting.
That was actually going to be my next question: is what are the parallels between this period? Because
Yeah.
it feels like it's essentially just down to disruption. There's a lot of disruption, and that in one way or another has led to a greater need for freelancers. Whether that's because companies are reluctant to hire full-time staff, but that it feels like now is a similar time. So I agree. It's interesting to see if that will play out again. One other question for you, just before we do get into the meat of the subject in AI, what was some of the things you learned being a freelancer versus being a full-time employee that you really value and took from that time?
Good question. Okay, kind of like a more personal note of like you're capable more than you think you are. You're capable of doing like more things than you might think you're able to do in like a given in a like short span of time, I guess. Yeah. I think that's like one of the personal things that I noticed, but then also kind of comparing it to a full-time role or any of like my past agency roles, because I've mostly been within agencies. Um, there are certain things I missed. Like I missed having a team. I missed having people from like top down also like share a lot of best practices or things that they're seeing, having like that kind of network, which I think you're kind of fostering in a sense anyways, like you as Matt with the paid search podcast and the meetings in like New York City. But it's a lot of that wasn't as prevalent, before, and people would just do it within the agency. I don't know how people in startup world did it before, but yeah, I missed that a lot. So now I guess I kind of get both sides of it because it's like the conferences and then also within the company I'm at Digital Matter, we do a lot of that internally too.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's so interesting to hear that perspective of like all the things you miss going freelance and having those kind of communities. I feel like I appreciate the call out. Thank you. I feel like LinkedIn and everyone on LinkedIn has done a really great job as an industry of like sharing knowledge, and there's so many great influencers out there. So it definitely feels like an easier time now to go out alone and still have access to all that kind of thought leadership. I thought the first thing you said there was really interesting about how it kind of gave you that confidence, which is really interesting. It's almost like you put yourself in a hard situation that is very different to where you were, with a lot of different pressures, a lot more responsibilities, and you kind of made it work, made it happen, and kind of had that realization of like, oh, I'm actually capable of a lot more here, which I think is, yeah, it's a very cool thing to be able to take away from that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I think a quick note too is one thing that a lot of people usually ask me is like where and how did you find clients? Most of my clients had been through like word of mouth. I didn't try Upwork, but I tried Fiverr. And Fiverr I got like no traction. But then again, I think the way I was selling myself on Fiverr was a little bit different. It was like I was trying to go through it in like a band or like a brand way. And I heard of not a band, but I think Tame Impala. It's one guy, but he made it sound like he was in a group, so that so I guess I can't remember the advantages of that as, like, a musician or an artist, but he had, like, some reasons for that. So it's like, maybe I should try something like that. So it didn't really sell that well, but, so Fiverr, I got, like, no one, but it was all through word of mouth.
Yeah, that's interesting. From a lot of people I speak to, that's usually the bulk of how they've generated, unless they then manage to build up like a bit of a personal brand on a separate platform like LinkedIn. I know people that have been LinkedIn game now for a few years and got 10, 20,000 followers, and that's kind of their main inbound. Um, and the marketing, the platforms like Upwork, Fiverr, a long time ago, I used to be on those for something else, and I found that you basically just have to build up that like feedback score. It's like any marketplace; you have to build up that credibility, because it's very difficult when you've got not many reviews, and then once you kind of get that, it makes it easier. But it's all it's a lot of work.
Price penetration, I was just like, I don't even wanna entertain something very, like, lowballing a price point. But that's because the work life has kind of spoiled me in that way.
It's nice. Is that a good segue into AI? Let's use it anyway. Um, so AI, the first, and just to recap, the subject here was really talking about the practical applications of AI. I said at the top, we come out of the hype cycle. We've got into a phase now where we're getting an understanding of what the tools and tech, and we can maybe see some stuff that's on the horizon in the next phase. But how would you summarize how AI is impacting the work we do today?
Let's see. Okay, there's maybe a few levels. So the first way I would say more so in like the day-to-days, right? I think we briefly chatted about this as we were loading up this like podcast, but using it beyond email, how else can we like streamline? I think in general, brands want more because the world wants more. I don't know. There's a chicken and the egg situation, but so we have to, I think, make sure that we're staying on top of processes and making them smarter. So it's no longer like a question of how do we share this report in an enhanced way or in a way that's like more palpable, I guess, to the client from like a design format. It's more so like, how can we do that, but in like a matter of a few minutes with like a script or building something else out. I know when my team had been looking to like hire new associates and items like that or folks like that, we some of the questions I sometimes ask the candidates is how they're already using AI. And some of them do shed the lights that like bigger agencies, they have I think like AI engineers who are like staying on top of all of this already. So they have scripts already or make some sort of like module that helps them better understand where their insight is lacking, where they could lean into a little bit more. Tangents, but I have a friend that works in like mergers and acquisitions, and they also work with insights. And just overall, I think I've heard from anyone that has to touch insights across different industries, usually they're lacking more so than being like brilliant. And so my friend in mergers and acquisition even is also doing something like this, where they use a script and a module. It'll grade someone's like insights, tell them what's lacking. It'll kind of give them a client's POV on it. So those different ways are incredible use cases, I think, for ChatGPT. And then just like building it in. So I think some of your guests in the past have also mentioned Gemini and connecting it to like the data that they ingest on Google. So I don't ingest data through like the Google platform. I use like Tableau. So it's a matter of then like, how can I use scripts for that? I actually have a screen share for later of you had a guest, Thomas, and he has like this masterclass on these items. So I asked ChatGPT, pretend to be Thomas, give me a rundown of this master class. They said, I can't do that because of IP. And I'm like, okay, just pretend to be an expert. Give me a rundown on these master classes. So I still have to sift through that. And it's a matter of like asking the right questions too. But yeah, so I think it's impacting my day to day, trying to enhance the way I do things to improve my workflows, and then also helping me level up in a sense. But then I think directly from that like paid search side, but as you know too, like our world within search, the ecosystem is broadening. So it's a lot more integration of like SEO, the optimizations on site, which sometimes we work in silos, especially if the teams aren't within like under the same roof, I guess. And so having questions like that come up, I want to be like ready to offer some sort of insights, even though I'm not an SEO expert, but to know like, okay, this should be what I'm looking at. And to an extent, I think over the years prior to AI, I have learned a few items from like SEO teams being on the same call as me, but there's so many more things that I know I'm not, that don't come to mind when I think like AI optimizations on like on site, the LLMs and such. So just prepare for those conversations as well.
Got it. So there's a couple of things in there I kind of want to try and summarize. So I talked a lot about like reporting and insights. It feels like the first part you said there was really around automation of getting the insight. And then there's, on top of that, enhancing the insight. So first of all, it's like automating what you would have done, and then it's making what you would have done slightly better. I wonder if my gut feel is the application right now is probably 70% just getting to what you were creating before, and then 30% is like making it better, because so much work was done to get the insight. It feels like if you try and like break down where's the bulk of the impact, 70% is probably in just getting the insight that you would have got before. And there's a little bit more that's like just enhancing it because it's able to spot things in the data that you couldn't necessarily or didn't have the time for. Would you say that split is fair, or would you rebalance that slightly?
I would say, yeah, I think that initial stage, it's pretty much there. I'm trying to work with my team internally to build out some sort of module that helps, because I know from, I guess this is like the vintage way of doing it, where you have like PowerPoint presentations that tell you this is what a bluff is. This is the way to like break down an insight. So I'm passing through those decks into, I'm trying to build a GPT to do this. But like pass that along, pass in any other like nuances. But yeah, definitely. I think that's the ideal goal, is first initial stage, get a 70% there of like what I would have said, maybe not with so much like the next steps. But adding color would be the ideal phase two. But so in that first round, I'm still not always quite there. Sometimes I will like data down. I give it like period over period. And just out of curiosity, I'm like, I give it simple questions and like give me 2 to 3 bullets and answer the so what. But then it'll give me things that don't really explain anything. I'm just like, oh, so it's my question.
Yeah.
But then if I give it like 70, 80% of the items there, and I'm like, okay, can you explain why this is happening or what to do about that? Sometimes it gives me items, but sometimes it also gets repetitive. So then it's a matter of, yeah, the questions or the inputs that I share there too.
I guess question there.
Mhm.
you're being selective with the data you give it. So
Yes.
yeah, because I guess the reason what I'm going with there is if you're being very selective and here's the data I would normally pull, give me the insights. Maybe uh, maybe it's a case of taking a step back and saying, actually, I need to give it all the data because I don't necessarily know or can't make the connections. So there's like a change in the process entirely, or not entirely, but like slight change in the process where you actually give it more than you would normally look at to help it make those connections and provide better insights. Is that something you have tried, or would you agree with that?
So I guess when I give it specific data, it's more so of like, so I'll give it channel level. By channel, I mean like paid search level. And then from there, breaking it down to campaign type, brand, shopping, PMAX, etc. And then when I get more specific, it's when it's like, okay, tell me why this type of brand product campaign is performing X% year over year and with these other metrics in mind. But usually I do like the full look. So I guess how else would I broaden that data dump?
I guess you could segment in a few different ways. The various segments are available and kind of pass those through. But I am just thinking out loud, really.
No, no, this is great because I love learning. So this is me learning on the spot. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned in the first part of talking through that was establishing like a base level of knowledge for a channel that you don't necessarily operate in, which I think is also very interesting because then it makes you just about dangerous, for
That
want of
is
a better way
cool.
of phrasing that. Yeah, exactly. And so you can kind of have that foundational level conversation with somebody else in a different channel. You can make those connections to your channel. So I think that's really a really good way of using it. Can you just break down like what do you prompt? Like how do you get that baseline level knowledge?
This is great. Because I oftentimes in my team we like go over some of these AI prompts. It's become more of a conversation point now, literally in like the past few weeks of what you're asking, just to see if we could ask the same questions around like the other clients that we have. So for instance, this was a bit of a one-off, but looking at like locations. So I did work with an SEO team that's not part of like Digital Matters. I had mentioned to them, hey, I'm seeing this page perform like this year over year. I'm also seeing these types of keywords pop up. I might not be seeing the same conversion rate year over year for those specific location keywords, but like maybe some of these other top volume keywords we do see conversion rate. And they're driving to X website. So that almost becomes like it's semi integrated with SEO, but more so like an omni channel kind of conversation, which is also exciting to have. So things like that I think is really interesting. Or I'm talking to I was actually talking to like our Feedonomics partner. So that's like one of the partners we use for shopping. And through a conversation that was it was just conversational. It's almost like talking to you. And they told me about something that they're seeing around like affiliates and Feedonomics. And I'm like, wait, how are you using affiliates? And so that led to more conversations or like more prompts, really. Conversations, I mean, by ChatGPT and I. But more between ChatGPT and I, where I'm asking it more questions around like, wait, how is this done? What does this mean? What can I look out for? Things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's almost like it's kind of there to help you understand what questions to ask, almost like which rabbit holes to go down, and how to. It's almost like the connective tissue between certain subjects, channels, situations, which is very interesting. How do you have any kind of best practices when it comes to prompts in these situations, or is it
Um,
still very sort of free flowing conversational?
I think the ones that have landed the most so far are I got this from a woman from our company. So she likes to ask, she'll give it like metrics, like this is what I'm seeing, up, down, et cetera, et cetera. Give me the so what and what to do about it. So that's usually part of my prompt sound. Give me the so what and what to do about it. And then I'll get more specific from there too. But that usually gives me a good lead, especially if it's like an integrated question of sorts. Also, I think sometimes I tend to write very long insights. So then I want to break it down further. I'm kind of there's a phrase for it, or like an idiom of like, I don't know. But the point is that I use this prompt to remind me of to like how to reduce it. So I'll ask it reduce by like 20%. Or if I was asking it to teach me about something, but then I want like the TLDR to like pass on to someone else, whether it's the client or to pass on to like an internal team, I'll ask that to be reduced to like 50% or something, which is really nice. And then I don't know if you've been using this, but I started using Dictate within ChatGPT. So I actually did this back in SMX for one of the panels that I attended. But I think I was having like internet issues or something, so I didn't really get to capture the entirety of it. But Mike Ryan actually had a PMAX reporting webinar earlier today. So I forgot about this feature within ChatGPT until the end. So during the Q&A is when I used it, and it essentially transcribed all that he said. And then from there, I asked it, what did I ask it? Hold on, I'm looking at it now. I said, please give me notes. Also give me the so what and what to do about it and potential tests to run from this conversation. Also, can you summarize so that I could share with my internal team, and also any other questions that I should be asking as a follow-up. And that's only from like the last 10 minutes, and I have a bunch of notes on it. Some of it though, it's a little bit spotty because it has to all make contextual sense. So there's a update within Google platform around the channel performance beta within PMAX, I believe specific to PMAX. So if you click on that, it says at the very top, reporting is now going to start as of like June 25th or 2025. I don't know what day, maybe the start of the month, but that update's going to happen in August, on August 8th, which I'm not too worried if it's just PMAX or any of the data really, because we already have API that pulls all that data. But so in the notes from ChatGPT, because it caught like the end of that conversation that Mike was kind of going over. So it just mentions like archive historical data, but it doesn't give you context. And I'm like, okay, well, this is where it gets a little bit spotty, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I wonder how you train it to provide that context, because that's quite difficult.
Mhm.
I think my experience is experimenting with the different LLMs. Like you get Claude take a slightly different approach, might pick out that context, whereas Gemini might not, versus ChatGPT might not. So yeah, it's kind of finding the one that works best for that specific task.
Yeah.
And that's actually personally how I use it. Like I prefer Gemini for coding and script writing because it seems to be better at that. And Claude I prefer for more complex rewriting or ideation. And ChatGPT is more like a sort of more sort of simple prompts, I guess. Yeah, I think it's very interesting how everyone's kind of using these things and finding the different ways to operate. The one thing that came to mind when you were talking about prompting, there's a book I'm reading right now, it's basically like using AI for marketing. I'm trying to read the title from here. So the book's over there, using AI for marketing. I was just very, very curious to see what was in there. It's very much about like examples from a workflow perspective. And it seems like 70 to 80% of what's being talked about here really is workflow. It's like productivity. But in the prompting section, it said one of the things people have found success with is by incentivizing the LLM by saying, I'll give you a $100 tip if you do well.
No way.
Which obviously you can't give it a tip, but just putting that prompt in led to some slightly better success for some people, which is just very, very funny that people are like really pushing the boundaries with like how to make these prompts better or, produce the output they want.
Yeah, I mean, I thought a please and a thank you went a long way, but it's not an incentive. So I'll
Tipping that.
yeah. Have you used there's one that Elon Musk, and a little controversial to say, but there's one that he mentioned, and they're supposed to Grok. Yeah, I think it's Grok. Have you used that at all? I haven't used it for paid search, but I looked at the example that they talked about, which was like a some sort of sine wave, and I was like, teach me about sine waves, you know?
Yeah, I have not used that one. That's probably the only one I haven't used. I feel like it probably needs to clean up its PR situation because there's been a couple of or quite a few examples where the outputs have been um, less than favorable, I think. So I think that particular one is, like you say, a little bit controversial. So I've not used it. I'm sure, like, for everyday use, there are many applications there, because I think I did see that maybe on some measures it did score higher than some of the other LLMs. So it'd be interesting to see if they can kind of clean that up, because obviously from an enterprise use perspective, they need to make sure that they are brand safe, etc. So they've got some work to do there, but they're no doubt in the race. So it's going to be, those guys, Claude, Anthropic, ChatGPT, probably Meta, Llama, Gemini. And I think the way to really stay at the forefront is just to test all of them, and figure out the benefits, pros and cons of all of them.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
guess next question for you then. So we've talked about insight writing, and then sort of improving insights, and then giving sort of base level knowledge. What else are you using it for outside of that?
Ooh, okay, this is gonna be exciting. So yeah, I think that really covers like the foundation, right? Is how to level that up. I think the next wave is how to add more value by doing things that some of these other third-party vendors are already doing. So I think there's always going to be third-party vendors, and by that I mean like the folks that might use like Bluetooth or GPS and satellite signals to know like if your phone's like this versus like this, how likely you are to go shopping. But I think with all the data out there, and you even see this within like the startup world too, where they're AI LLM driven, I think there's a lot of opportunity within companies that work with a lot of this data, a lot of ad agencies that work with a lot of this data for them to make better sense of it. So, like there are some third parties that some of my clients are looking at to have a better understanding, like of site optimizations, feed optimizations, and doing this at scale. So I ran a test actually within shopping to test around like different product nouns. All in all, it may have taken me not like a week straight because of like other client deliverables, but it took me almost a week to do the outline, get the strategy approved, work with our partners at Feedonomics, having some back and forth of that, and then actually launching, maybe about a week. But there are partners out there that can show you that alternative noun using, they're already scraping the web. So they already have a lot of, I think, signals that they're using to tell you, okay, right now, so like Western style right now is really in for like the summer. Part of it due to like Beyonce, part of it is just like a style thing that has like surfaced, I guess. But so ahead of it already being like late June or July, like when that was still at its, I think, coming about maybe end of May or so, like that would have been helpful to know for some of my clients of like, how do we position this? How do we scrape more or like add more of these like Western like keywords? I'm not saying it'll necessarily make a huge dent, but I think because it's at scale and it's not just that one keyword, it's several keywords, and you're looking at several products. If you have thousands and thousands of SKUs, I think it'll make a difference then. And then there are other ones too that have like, so I'm brand agnostic, but I think it's just really interesting. So if I could remember the names, there's one called Qlo, and they do more of like a cultural. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna butcher this. I hope not, but they do more so of like a cultural insights and trends as to like who's showing up. So I think they had like a case study with like the Michelin brand where they were able to use AI to already predict what the person is gonna want. So it's almost like it's getting to that first level, like very surface level, just like scratching on the tip of being like an AI agent. 'Cause you think about them already, like, knowing, anticipating. So it's like, "Okay, what else can we do to do that?" I think just from the client perspective, right, because I work with the businesses, it's about doing something like that. Like, how can I use alternative product now at scale? So I don't have to, like, sift through SQRs and then ask other people to help me brainstorm and see if they have more ideas and et cetera, et cetera. Like, this could all be done really quickly, which is really exciting. Do I have any other examples of that? Not off the top of my head, but yeah, I think LLMs, just being able to like sift through all this data really quickly and ask it questions, it'll really help a business with revenue and just being a little bit more, being more relevant, which I think it's interesting, actually, tangent here. It's interesting because I had asked some of these questions to Google, like my Google partners, whom I love. So shout out to them because I know they're trying to do the best and being super helpful. But I'd asked them, like, why aren't you guys building this out? Like, it seems like a revenue loss for you. Like, we don't have to go to like a third party and entertain them. Like, we go directly to you guys because Google Merchant Center. So why isn't this already part of the product feature on the roadmap? Um, which there was no comment, but I think a lot of this could be done by Google if they wanted to.
Interesting. Mm. Yeah, I don't know where I can't break down like the incentives or disincentives there for them to do that. There's obviously a lot of value in it for us as advertisers agencies, especially when the whole landscape is getting so fragmented. Having access to tools that can get data from all these different places and say, this is trending here, this is trending here, this might be relevant. That is super useful. And yeah, it's great to see those products being built. And I guess that's what AI is really good at. It's in many ways, it's just condensing down and summarizing very, very complex data sets into something that's very digestible for us as almost stupid humans. Uh, the one thing that I want to ask you, actually, because you mentioned agents, how would you personally describe an AI agent? Like, what is an AI agent?
I think in simple terms, it's essentially an algorithm that just helps streamline XYZ something. Streamline a process, it could be any process. Maybe it's the process of you booking a flight. Maybe it's the process of you trying to scale a test like the one I described. Maybe it's shopping. I think I saw someone who uses one of these LLMs to buy like watches, but they're like, but I don't want a watch that came out this year. It had to have come out last year, and then whatever other parameters. I think Google has been trying to do stuff like that in terms of like the shopping. And I think with like AI Max search, which I haven't tested yet, but like that is the idea. I think these agents, yeah, I think that's my simple term for or definition for agents. But then I also think that they're gonna be so interconnected into like these different websites that I don't know if we'll need some of these extra parties. Maybe for like people in our generation, because it's like the older you are, the less likely you might be to like use some of these younger tools or something. I think there was definitely like a stat about like Gen Z is more likely to use like Chat GPT or LLMs versus the common millennial. I think I don't know about you, but like I feel like a lot of things that I do that might seem very tech savvy, it's mostly because of my job, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You mentioned Tomasz earlier, actually, and
oh gosh,
the
that's
episode we
it.
did
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
yeah, the episode we did with him a while ago. He mentioned that he saw somewhere that the younger generation's using these LLMs almost like a personal OS operating system,
Yeah.
which is like crazy. 'Cause it just means that it's probably part of their lives way more than it is for us. So yeah, absolutely, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops in that generation, and then probably how it ages up and we start having to use it as well. I think that the agent thing is really interesting because there was definitely a period of time where I feel like everybody had different definitions for agents, and maybe that's a little bit still the case. But I think for me, it's automation, like what you described there in terms of like being able to buy watches or book a holiday. That's just automation that we could do before. So for me, it's like, well, the difference here is it that it's the ease with which you can create this stuff, and then maybe the wider variety of things it can do, and then maybe the connection of different agents and automation. So it's more like it feels like partly a marketing term, which every industry is great at when it comes to this stuff. Is like, let's give it a new name when really it's but it feels like the actual core of what it does is essentially just automating a process.
I think automating the process. I also take in and consume a lot of like sci-fi. So I think my sci-fi gets gets all tingly when or like my funny bone for sci-fi, I guess, my sci-fi bone, starts to like lead me to think I might see this in the form of, I think in like video games you have like that little sidekick, the little bubble that floats around you. I don't think it's gonna be that necessarily, but maybe we have so many like smart devices and like wearable devices, which are also gonna be huge when we better connect that as signals, right? A few tangents in my mind, sorry. So I'll try to stay on track of, okay, so you have this little sidekick essentially that helps. And then it's not just gonna be our wearables. We already see like the smart mirrors. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of like smart rooms and stuff. And not to get too into like Black Mirror, but there's like an episode where the guy wakes up and his in like the area he wakes up in, it's all white, but then when he actually like opens up his eyes, like the walls are all, what is this? It looks like nature or something, you know. I think maybe some metropolis areas are gonna offer that in like luxury apartments, which is good for, I think, the market in a sense, because then there's a lot more connection points and signals. That's my sci-fi, like, yeah, that's what I think might happen. But I think we already are kind of seeing to some extent uh small stepping stones towards that, again, with like the smart mirror. I'm sure you could probably find someone out there that's already creating like the wall. And I don't think it's like a bad thing. I think it'll be really interesting. But we also saw, what was this in like, I mean, it's still early 2000s, I guess, but maybe around like 2011, 2012, when a lot of consumers of like Instagram, they were like, "Oh, I swear my social media can like is recording me because all of a sudden I got like an ad for, I don't know, like hamburgers and hot dogs, and I just mentioned that to my sister on the phone, you know, kind of thing." And it's like there was R&D going on behind that. At some point, I worked for a company that had like an R&D department that like once it became public, you know, I found out about like, oh, our R&D was like working on this stuff. And I'm just like, oh, wow. Um, there's a lot of things going on with like all the CCTVs and whatnot, you know, like and how they could do heat maps and like recording things and the what is this? The verifications for like, are you human? Are you not human? Some of those take into account like real images that that you're essentially helping their model be able to like understand. Like, can you read the numbers? Can you detect all the bikes in this? You know, so like it's all kind of getting built out to an extent. I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetime, but I also believe the technological curve of like how tech advances, it's just gonna go like that. So it'll be interesting for sure to see how it all plays out.
Yeah,
Outside.
I think we're miles away from paid search now, but
Sorry.
so at
Still the
time.
target.
Before we do though, I think the description of the agent there as like an assistant and the sci-fi comparison is really interesting because that does feel like if you talk to somebody who's in the industry building this stuff, that is probably what they envision. It is something that has access to basically everything you do digitally so that it can connect everything, it can do everything, it knows everything about you, it has access to your accounts, it can serve as a personal agent. We're not there yet. So the agents of today are more very specific jobs and roles to do certain things. And I think when you think about it like that, for me, it really helps me break down to be like, okay, so there's the life cycle of an agent as a term we've sort of coined in the last year or two. It is this thing today, but it's going to be something quite different in maybe a few years' time. So it's going to evolve as what it is, which I think makes a lot of sense to me. It's like both of those things are agents basically, but one is an agent in a very sort of young form in terms of its development within the industry, and then the other one is kind of where the industry probably thinks it's going to get to eventually, which it's going to have to. We're going to be having discussions about privacy and data access and like connecting, walled gardens. So that's going to be interesting. But it feels like there's probably some very large revenue incentives for companies to build that eventual system. So I'm going to say 5 years time.
5 years. Wow. Okay. If we're placing a bet, I say still like maybe 10 years. As you mentioned, I think I forgot at what point just now, but you had mentioned everything seems to be kind of like decentralized. There's this going on here, this going on here, this and all that good jazz. And you see it even within like a company. Like some teams might be talking, but maybe not all of them talk during an all hands or something. Like I remember at big agencies, sometimes that would happen. Like happy hours aren't enough to get everyone talking on the same levels. But I think the same thing with like all this AI agentic technology and the way it evolves. So maybe from an extent, like, yeah, Google has it. The use case is what we just described to like automate our processes that are connected to Google. But you also have someone like Axiom, another big like, well, Google, I guess, is kind of like a data partner outside of like its AI services. I guess the cloud service kind of makes it a data partner, but like someone like Axiom, I remember back in college, we had a speaker who was telling us how they're working on like marrying your offline and online data. And not just that, but they're marrying the fact that you have maybe 5 different email accounts, but it's all being sourced to the same IP. Like all of this stuff has been going on for what seems like centuries, but truly about like few decades nonetheless. And so I think all these different things are happening and evolving on their own. Maybe within 10 years, someone's going to finally like grasp it all, put it all together, make something a little bit more holistic with all the technologies that are out there. But I also think just going back to the AI agent, if we do have like a little buddy agent, I think a lot of people are still gonna want to live like in the real world, I guess, like the way that we know it before. Like some people opt out of being so connected and they talk about like not having cell phone or social media. Like there's still gonna be people like that, right? And I think to that extent, though, another sci-fi. So one of my favorite books, it's called The Machine Stops, and it's a short story. But essentially, you live in these little pods, and your agent, I guess, is your pod. It's like it's your home. It's where you're like born into your own pod as an individual. But from there, people are consuming lectures and like how to's, whether it's cooking or if they want to know the latest on like climate change or something. Like they're consuming all of this, and their pod is just so interconnected with them since they were a baby that it just knows them, just knows what they want. And they could always like change the channel and everything, but it just knows. So I think that's sci-fi, but like I think we're gonna get to that level where it knows. Because we're already I don't know if you have kids or know people with kids right now, but there's a lot of kids out there that their schoolwork is already connected to like Google. There's like Google Classroom. Like they already have an account, like their name is already out there. I think that becomes maybe a privacy issue, but that's already kind of leading up to and building out this world of people who are very connected. And maybe they get a choice once they're like our age. Maybe they could opt out of all of that. Or but maybe they want to like continue to opt in, and you could see all the accolades and et cetera, et cetera. It'll be interesting.
It will. I kind of want to get away from sci-fi because I'm getting excited in the relationship. No, no. But I think even if you could debate like the details there, the one thing that probably is very likely to happen is just this: we're going to be more connected
Sure.
digitally in lots of different ways. Like AI is going to put us in a place where we're using the internet and we're online more than we ever have been. And take it back to search. Like we've been talking a lot about how AI search is replacing traditional search, but in reality, it may be a portion of it, but it's also incremental. It's also a new way of searching. So it's like we're just growing the number of surfaces and ways we interact with the internet, and that means more data. That means it knows more about us. That means more opportunities for optimization, targeting.
And you think about the ecosystem now, what was it, like a few weeks ago, the update with Instagram and how it's appearing on the SERP.
Yeah.
So things like that. Yeah, I think that makes sense. There's a quote about like, don't think about others as your competition, like work with them. And I think this is one of those collaborative approaches that Google's taking, because for some time, maybe the past few years since COVID, there's a lot of talk of like who's taking that piece of a pie, whose pie piece is like larger, Google or maybe like someone like Meta or TikTok who has grown, I think, pretty significantly within like the DTC and like shopping world. So I think the collaborative approach really works well for them.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. This has been really fun. What was your bet? 10 years time?
So 35.
10 years. Okay. 10 years. I'm going to go 5 years, but I'm going to caveat it with a 61% chance in 5 years.
Oh, okay. Wait, we have caveats. It's smart. Okay, I'll add mine. I think we'll be 80% there with like the Gentics and them having a more holistic approach in our life if we opt into it.
Got it. Okay. We'll have to watch this back in 5 and 10 years time. Awesome. Yazmin, this is very fun. Lots of different rabbit holes we could probably chat about.
So we haven't even finished the video, but yeah, another.
Yeah. Another time. Yeah. Thanks very much. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Matt.